It's quite strange actually, because Sonic Racing Crossworlds ended up being one of my favourite games of the year. I really enjoyed playing with my son, but the Nintendo Switch 1 release wasn't all that. In fact, it really wasn't all that. We ended up playing it mostly on a different platform, just because the 60 FPS really does make a difference. So we now have the Switch 2 version or the Switch 2 upgrade, depending on which route you go. I ended up paying a $5, it was like half price at the moment. So is Sonic Racing Crossworlds the Switch 2 version supersonic, or are you about to have egg on your face? Well, my name's Mark Walker. Welcome back to SwitchUp. Now let's find out. This episode was sponsored by KontrolFreek with their performance thumbsticks, which were specifically designed for Call of Duty Black Ops 7. And yes, I do own a PlayStation, but I did also notice that they work absolutely flawlessly on the Pro Controller. Now, specifically, these have links to Call of Duty and the fact that both versions of them come with an in-game gun charm. What they are is a thumbstick attachment that essentially allows you to improve your precision. It gives you a little more height on the joysticks. They have a slightly rubberized texture to them, and that extra height means that you can slightly improve your movement, especially when you're aiming down sights. You get those little micro adjustments. These were really handy on the Switch actually, because Tomb Raider came out without gyro, so I could actually aim with these. But for playing COD, it obviously makes a big difference. If only I was a better player. They've got lots of different products as well that you can check out. I'll have links to KontrolFreek down in the description, and you'll find an affiliate code down there. A big thanks to KontrolFreek for sponsoring this episode. Check them out, the links will be down there. Looking then first at the Nintendo Switch 1 release, as we can see, it had a 30 frames per second target, and it maintained it most of the time, although there were quite a few fluctuations in very busy areas. It was never terrible, but things like frame pacing weren't entirely good, and comparative to any other version of the game at the time it was released, it was looking pretty poor. Now, having said that, the gameplay still held up surprisingly well. The Crossworlds system basically means that you enter teleporters or portals, and you can warp the track from one to the other, and that happens literally as you're racing, so it's something I'd not seen before and really did keep the freshness. And then on the final stage of, let's call it the Grand Prix, because that's basically what it is, the tracks constantly change in each lap. So yeah, I really enjoyed the system, thought it worked very well. I thought the carts as well and the different vehicles were really well handled, nothing too silly, a nice bit of customization in there with some modularity to them with things that you could earn during those Grand Prix. But it was the tracks that were the real standout for me. The fact that it had that shift in nature, but also the actual designs. There were some good shortcuts, they were pretty well designed for the most part. There were a couple of stinkers, but there were also more standouts. There's one where there's this giant octopus, a few that would see your vehicle switching into a flying vehicle, and then you're kind of gliding through various hoops and things to get a boost. And it just had that sense of, I am a racing game that's here so that you can enjoy yourself with a nice dose of freshness, something that other games within this genre, nudge nudge wink wink, could probably do with. The same went for handheld as well. Now the difference was that if you played the Switch 1 version on Switch 2, you did have better performance. Not above 30 still, but it was more consistently 30. And I believe it used dynamic resolution scaling, so you tended to just have a slightly nicer image, but it was still very much the Nintendo Switch 1 edition and not much more. Now then we have the Nintendo Switch 2 release. So yeah, as you can see, we have a significantly better picture. Let's have a look at a bit of footage of just the two games side by side, not completely lined up, but enough for you to be able to see the major changes. Frame rates, well, it's various different frame rates actually across the Switch 2 version. The most obvious one is the single player frame rate, which brings the resolution up to around 1440p at 60 frames per second for 1 or 2 players in docked mode. In handheld mode, 1 or 2 players can play at 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames per second. Yes, there are the occasional very minor stutters, but overall it is such a step up from the original release. Now alongside that, the games also feature 4-player split screen mode. The 4-player split screen, that's 1440p in docked mode, but this time round it's at 30 frames per second. Now, while I think that is reasonable, I really think they should have still gone for a lower resolution, something like 1080p dynamically scaled, and stuck to the 60 frames per second for 4-player. Now, with the resolutions I've stated, there is almost zero chance they're native, so we're looking at a lower internal resolution upscaled using whichever method they've gone for. I don't know whether it's DLSS. The reason I think we can be pretty sure of that is because the PS5 release has the same resolution, 1440 at 60, but even over there it has some slight blur into it. It's unlikely, I think, that the Switch 2 would be able to perform better than the PS5. So somewhere in the region of 720 to 900p would be more realistic, and that's the general consensus on Reddit as well. Moving over to handheld, we can see things hold up very nicely indeed. The 1080p upscaled resolution looks sharp enough. Aliasing, jaggies on the edges of things, it is evident when you start to really look, but the speed the game's running now, it really isn't nearly as noticeable as it was before. Overall, it's a much cleaner image across the board. I am pleased that at least they've managed to get 2-player split screen running at 60. And as I say, I think dropping the resolution even further so that we can get 60 FPS in 4-player would have been the way to go. As far as the game itself, it's exactly the same. You don't get any new tracks, anything like that. And the Digital Deluxe Edition does still include the DLC and the Season Pass, all that stuff that, honestly, I don't really care about. But there is one little bonus that if you buy the Switch 2 edition between the 4th of December and I think the 17th of December, you get the Werehog pack as a free bonus. Now, I don't know whether that's Japan only or whether that applies across all regions. You would hope it would, but either way, it is 50% off during that time as well for that upgrade path. As far as storage space, you're looking at around 16 gigabytes for the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, and your save data can be transferred across without any issues. And it does support full crossplay across all platforms, which is another thing I'm very glad to see. Network code and latency seems to be okay. I haven't had any major issues, and the biggest shock is there are actually players online. One of the biggest pieces of news, perhaps, is that on their website, Sega state that the physical edition for the Nintendo Switch 2 will actually use a game card, so not a game key card. They're very specific about that. The question says, does the physical version use a game card or a game key card? And the response is, physical copies of the Nintendo Switch 2 edition will use a game card, ergo the proper physical. So I think that's such a smart move on their part. I don't know if that comes out pre-Christmas, but if it does, that is a perfect little stocking filler. Another important thing is if you have the Nintendo Switch 2 version, you do automatically have the ability to share that with a Switch 1 or to load that onto a Switch 1 using that card system, but obviously without the upgraded features. It will just be the Switch 1 edition. So there we have it right now. You're getting a smoother, faster, better looking version of the same experience on your Nintendo Switch 2. You can do that with a 50% discount up until like the 18th of December. They are going to release a proper full physical release, so I'm more than happy to support the game, and I probably will be picking this one up for my kid for Christmas because, yeah, getting a proper game, you stick the cartridge in and be completely antisocial while your parents are stressing themselves out over the carving of the Christmas turkey. Well, it's tradition, isn't it? We all did it, or, well, a lot of us, I'm sure. Thank you to all of you that enjoy the content. I hope this was helpful. Thank you to our Patreons, our members, and all of you for all things Switch. All the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!